And then we'll go ahead and get started. So, I'll kick us off.
Thank you all for being here. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That was Charlie Kirk. My name is Mickey Mason. I'm the president of our college, Republicans. We want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's really great seeing such a large crowd. I think this is more even as we had last year. For college Republicans, we want to spread conservative values and bring the right mindset to campus, of course.
My name is Tyler Breiser. I'm the president of Turning Point USA here at Fort Hays. I'm an engineering design and technology major here, and we, on behalf of the Republican side as well as Turning Point, wanted to vote this debate to Charlie Kirk.
My name is Hazel Franz. I am a senior here at Fort Hays State. I am majoring in biology and minoring in mathematics and chemistry, and I'm just really excited to have a nice, polite debate with the college, or the Young Democrats.
My name is Daniel Beckley. I'm a senior here at Fort Hays State University. I'm a criminal justice and political science major, and again, it's my first debate, so I'm just excited to be here and have them join us and have just a fun debate where we can kind of share ideas together and hopefully get some audience input as well.
We're all excited, as long as we have time, we're all excited to work with the other side of the aisle on these matters and hope to have a great substantive discussion on policy.
Would you mind passing it on?
My name is Liliana Nash. I am the president of the Young Democrats here at Fort Hays State.
My name is Genesis Wilson. I'm the vice president of the Young Dems here, vice president of Black Student Union, and involved in many others like Women in STEM and Pre-Med Club. I'm a biology major.
Hi, my name is Madison Albers, and I'm a member of the Young Dems, and I like to do other advocacy work with civic engagement and just general rights for students.
Hi, I'm Jessica Alexander, and I'm a junior here at Fort Hays State University, and I'm part of the Young Dems.
In a world increasingly divided by discrimination and fear, the Young Democrats stand firm in our commitment to protect democracy, defend human rights, and build a campus and a country rooted in unity and compassion. Across America, we see families being ripped apart at borders, women and people with uteruses stripped of their right to make choices about their own bodies, and political leaders being targeted with violence simply for standing up for what they believe in. This is not the America we were promised. This is not the democracy generations before us fought to preserve. We believe that every student, every family, and every citizen deserves the freedom to live with dignity and the opportunity to shape their own future.
We are the generation that will not accept hate as a political strategy. We demand equality, we fight for affordable education, healthcare, and we believe that your zip code or your bank account should not determine your worth. We believe love is love, science is real, and that our government should serve people, not corporations or party interest. Our mission is to bridge divides, make equality standard, and ensure that our democracy remains not just a system of government, but a shared promise of justice for all. We also want to make sure to go ahead and thank our Ellis County Democrats for providing pizza today, all of you guys for coming out today, and just everybody who's involved on this campus that makes this possible.
Alright, so we're going to go to our first question today. It's going to go to the Republicans. The question is as follows. So much of political discourse is about the politics of negation. Tell me something positive about the other party.
So, as the college Republicans, we have a great deal of respect for the Young Democrats and the Democratic Party as a whole. We believe that as Americans, they really do want what is best for our country. They have an undying passion for those who are in need. They have a lot of empathy, which is definitely admirable. And I would think that we actually agree with the Democratic Party and most of the country on almost 80% of issues, but we just have different means of getting them done. So I really do appreciate the Young Dems for coming out to this debate tonight, because we just love debating these opinions, because we all just really want what's best for America and to make a country that we can be proud of our grandchildren to live in.
Thank you. Now to the Democrats. So much of political discourse is about the politics of negation. Tell me something positive about the other party.
Hi, I think there are so many positives for the other party and for all parties, because one thing about our parties is it means that we're all getting engaged. We're all getting engaged with our democracy every day. Everyone up on this stage does work daily to ensure that our university is thriving, our community is thriving, and that our nation is thriving. And I think that's a lot to be really happy and proud of, even if we disagree on the ways that we get there. And that's one thing I would like to applaud these specific students for as well. You will see them around campus fighting for the values they believe in and sticking to their values no matter what challenges they face, and I think that's a really honorable trait. And on top of that, I think overall, we get really confused and blurred with party lines and hard stances. So I love this question because it really illuminates a chance to show that even though we're on two different sides of this stage right now, that we're all together students who care about our community, who care about you, the students, and who care about where our future is going and what's next for us, as we're the generation that will be taking over and inheriting the earth. So I think there's a lot that can be said for both parties that is admirable, courageous. It takes a lot to be on the stage and to say all of your values and innermost thoughts out to a public like this. And it can be scary, but we're both up here and we're both fighting for values that we believe in, and we're both exercising our democracy in a civically engaged way. And I think that's something to be really proud of.
Thank you so much. Our next question is going to go to the Democrats first. It's over immigration. Do you think that the mass deportation policy that we're seeing enacted is delivering on the promise of safety to voters, or has the current administration gone too far?
I think it is entirely clear that this administration has gone too far. I'm a proud second-generation immigrant, and I stand true to my values. I think one important statistic that's important to note is that 51.9 million immigrants live in the U.S. That is a historic high, I do admit, and it's important that we have policy that regulate this issue. But on the other hand of this, a mass deportation takes away from our essential labor force. It is in agriculture and construction that we see a large number of unauthorized immigrants. It is 17%, according to the Pew Research Center, that makes up our agricultural force. If you pull 17% of a workforce out with no plan to replace it, how will that economy still stand? How will we find people to work in these jobs? And if the issue of the administration that they worked so hard on was we're going to bring grocery prices down, we're going to make houses affordable, if the people who are working hard in the fields are no longer there and you're having to replace them and having labor shortages, grocery prices are going to go up. You are all seeing it right now. And if the focus was on hardened criminals, then why do we see mothers, children, a child, a 4-year-old child who was a citizen battling cancer, deported? I ask you one thing. What safety risk does a 4-year-old with cancer pose?
Okay, and now to the Republicans, same question. Do you think that the mass deportation policy that we are seeing enacted is delivering on the promise of safety to voters, or has the current administration gone too far?
Well, the tactics of ICE and there's being even legal citizens being deported obviously is something that the Republican Party does not agree with. What we do agree with is the legal deportation of illegal immigrants. They have committed a crime by entering the country illegally, and that is a crime that needs to be punished by them returning to their home country. I think one thing that Madison brought up that was really valuable is that they are allowed, that the 17% of the workforce, but they are not getting fair wages. So they should be able to give them the opportunity to have fair wages by being legal immigrants. And another thing that is often not mentioned, so around 3% of the population, roughly, is illegal immigrants, but they account for 20% of felony-related charges due to fentanyl. And this is a huge disparity. This is almost a 700% increase in the crime. And while they do make up a smaller portion of the society, they make up a large portion of those felony-related crimes, especially related to drug use. That's why we support sending them back to their original countries, not separated, but together with their whole family.
Yes, I would like to rebut. I think it's really important that at the beginning of the statement it was mentioned that they are against sending citizens back, especially legal citizens, but the idea of keeping families together but still deporting entire families does just that. It deports legal citizens. So that is an entire contradiction of the point they were trying to make, which is an important one to know. Also, when it comes to felonies and the fentanyl crisis, it does need to be handled, but it's clear that what they're doing is not working. The responsible thing to do would be to...
Now to the Republican position of the government shutdown. Who is at fault for the government shutdown? Republicans or Democrats?
Indubitably, this is a Democratic shutdown. This is the Schumer shutdown, in fact. We Republicans, we believe, we want to ask Democrats, how do you plan on paying federal employees? This is a clean CR that we've proposed many times. The Schumer shutdown, this is stuff that we've already, both parties have voted for in the past. We hope to find common ground, of course, and make sure the government's fully funded. But these clean CRs, there's nothing more we can do. We already passed this clean CR in the House, and we hope to pass it in the Senate.
Just for those who are not aware, a clean CR is a continuing resolution which is essentially funding the government at levels exactly as they were before the shutdown. So this is how we were living beforehand. The Democrats in Congress are not voting just to fund the government as is. And I need to remind you that we only have 53 Republican senators, and you need 60 votes in order to pass a spending resolution. And so we need at least 7 Democrats to help pass this bill. So they are refusing to do so. Republicans are voting to open the government, but they are refusing.
By clean CR, we mean that we're not pushing any specific Republican policy. We're not trying to change any of the previous funding legislation that was already passed. We're not trying to make something that's unagreeable. This is something that Democrats have already voted for.
Who's at fault for the government shutdown? Republicans or Democrats?
Yes, we'd like to start this off with all three, or not all three, sorry, the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, so our president, are all right now handled and have a majority of Republicans in them. That means that it is a Republican's job to go ahead and make sure their policies pass, make sure they get the ideals they were pushing and the policies they were pushing to get through. Currently, they're saying it's a clean CR and that's what they want to push, but in this it does have cuts to Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act. It has cuts to a lot of things that we need as Americans and a lot of things that Democrats aren't going to agree with. Whether Democrats have voted for something in the past or not does not matter here now because they don't further want to continue voting to cut Medicare and Medicaid for Americans. We have to notice right now that if we vote for this bill and if stuff like Medicare and Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act become more expensive for people, we don't have those premiums or those premiums raised, less people will be on healthcare. The less people on our healthcare raises premiums for people who don't use the Affordable Care Act. If you right now pay for your insurance all by yourself and you don't even use any government assistance with that, your healthcare will go up with these budgets. The Democrats, yes, are holding out with voting for this resolution right now, but that is for the American people and to make sure that we get what we deserve, especially in the sector of healthcare. I would love to reiterate that this is a Republican shutdown. They are managing a majority of all of the places that need to pass this right now.
I do want to briefly mention if anyone has any written questions, please bring them to us today. To the Democrats again, this one is over tariff policy and inflation. Do you think that tariff policy is overall beneficial to America or undermines American interests?
We think as the young Democrats here at Fort Hays State University that the tariff policies are not beneficial to Americans or anybody in the United States. Tariff policies are putting taxes on goods that are being imported to the United States, and we have to know while we do want American companies and small businesses to flourish here, we can't make every raw material. We cannot make everything that it takes to make a product, and we need to get that from other countries. We also need to make sure that we have a bustling trade with other countries. Right now we're seeing, with our farmers, specifically in soybean, having a bad time with trade and not being able to get where we need to go with that. If we are not being able to trade these things and have good relations with other countries because of these tariffs, we are going to have an excess of our own raw materials. We're not going to be making money. Farmers are going to be out of business. We have to know that tariffs don't just affect our grocery prices, they affect our farmers, they're affecting our community in every single sector. Tariffs are making inflation go higher. If you looked pre-tariff taxes on goods here in America when you go to the store, they are raising right now. If you look at the same bag of coffee about 6 months ago versus now, it is raising, and that is because of tariff policy. And if it keeps going up, it is going to further disadvantage Americans.
I would also like to leave the audience with one question in their brain. Why would corporations create new factories and make new working laws when they can just charge you up the wazoo for child labor?
Republicans, do you think that tariff policy is overall beneficial to America or undermines American interests?
On tariff policy, this is new. They've been incorporated just since around August, right? This is new policy, and we don't have the long-term efficacy of tariffs at this time. What we can say is, since then, we've already had several $1 trillion of investment brought to the United States because of tariff policy. But even if you look back at the historics of it, if you look back to the Smoot-Hawley tariff back in 1930, that tariff act was instigated after the stock market crash that caused the Great Depression. Tariffs didn't cause the Great Depression. Tariffs have never done anything of the sort, and currently we don't have the data to back that at this time.
The Republican stance on tariffs is to promote American jobs. It is to eliminate child labor and inhumane labor overseas. It is to level the playing field, which is currently funneling money into other countries because it is so uneven, the amount of tariffs that we get charged and do not charge back. To address the inflation, under the Trump administration, the inflation year over year was 1.9% pre-COVID. During the Biden administration, year over year, inflation rate was 5.3%.
Another thing I would like to add is that we are seeing an incredible influx of trade deals from all these countries that want to avoid tariffs. So if they do not want tariffs, they should come to the White House, to Congress, try and strike a deal, and maybe they can avoid all of these tariffs.
Our final general questions for Republicans is over voting rights. The Kansas legislature has passed legislation to reduce the number of days for advance voting. Do such policies strengthen election confidence or suppress voter participation?
I believe if we really want secure elections, that it is totally okay to put some restrictions on that. If we really wanted every single vote to be counted by anybody who was eligible to vote, we would have to have voting pretty much year-round. But we can't really do that. So by restricting it to a certain time, for the ones who think that it is really important that they get their vote out, they will make it a priority and they will go and cast their ballot, whether that is mail-in or in person. We would suggest in person. That is the way that it was done beforehand. And it's the way that we think it should go forward.
Moreover, any of these new legislation, it tamps down on voter fraud, any potential voter fraud. We believe Election Day is Election Day. You should show up in person to vote, and obviously, if there is extenuating circumstances why you can't show up in person, there should be a way for you to vote by mail or the associated policy there. However, voting day is voting day. The mass majority of people should show up in person. This tamps down on voter fraud.
To the Democrats, the Kansas legislature has passed legislation to reduce the number of days for advance voting. Do such policies strengthen election confidence or suppress voter participation?
Can we get our time started?
If we do not have advanced voting, as they said that we should have voting on Election Day, what about the working class that cannot just take a leisure day off? What about the people that have to pay rent? What about the people that have mouths to feed? With their proposal, they just said that they didn't want everyone to be able to vote. And voting is an American right. If we didn't want advanced voting, then we should open up maybe having work off on Election Day so people can come out, or maybe having a half day so people can come out and vote if they needed to. Getting rid of advanced voting makes it so people have to either decide between feeding their families or voting for the future of their country.
would like to remind everyone in the audience that this legislature is currently under lawsuit right now for infringing on voter rights. These are your rights. You, the students, are most likely to be affected by this legislation and those with suffering disabilities. I can bet a lot of you in this audience, due to my work in voter rights, are not registered here in Ellis County, are registered back home. And if you didn't know, Fort Hays does not have any official policy excusing you from class for voting rights, for voting in elections. You can talk to your professors and you can ask off, yes, but there's no official blanket policy through Fort Hays. So your professor can say, sorry, you can't go home to vote. And that's an important fundamental right for many of you. And I hope that many of you are registered in this room, but I would like to remind you guys as well that only 62.4% of our voter turnout happened in 2020.
We're now going to move on to our audience questions. We will begin with the young Dems. Should unborn children be granted the same right? Should unborn children
To the young Dems, should unborn children be granted the same right to life and legal protection as individuals who are already born?
If unborn fetuses were granted the same rights as living fetuses, this would open tons of loopholes within the government. Child support laws would be brought up to questioning. Multiple insurance claims would be brought up to questioning. I mean, if an unborn child has the same exact rights as a living child, then can't a woman who is 2 months pregnant take a man to court and get child support for that baby? Is that what everyone in this room wants?
Yes, we also have to look at it in the sense of what Lily is saying is we also would mean this is more people you could add on to food stamps, so we'd have to allow that. If you have a miscarriage, can you take life support out of that child before it's born? And then if you have a miscarriage, get a payout for it. This is going much further than just a simple question, and we have to remind that and remember that as an audience.
It's also important to note that the Constitution, the backbone of our country, has already decided this for us. The 14th Amendment clearly states, and mind you, this 14th Amendment is what guarantees our due process, our rights to life, liberty, states, the first words are all persons born. Our founders and framers laid this out clearly for us. This has been decided, this is important to note, this has been brought up in Supreme Court cases. There is a reason for this, which is what my counterparts have said, is this causes tremendous issues in our legal branch, which is already drowning in cases.
back to the Republicans?
Back to the Republicans. Should unborn children be granted the same right to life and legal protection as individuals who are already born?
Yes, 100%. These are humans, and if you believe in human rights and the human rights outlined in our Declaration of Independence, which I would say is the first founding document and the real backbone that laid the framework for everything else in our country, that supports the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, you may notice that you cannot have the pursuit of happiness or liberty if you are not alive. And yes, I do agree that if a woman wants to take a man, or a woman who is 2 months pregnant wants to take a man who is the father of her child to court and get child support because he abandoned her, 100%. That is another protection for women. That is another protection for the child. And I also noticed that on our other side, they couldn't determine whether to call the child in the womb a fetus or a child. They called it both because you know deep down that that is a child. Because if you leave it be for 9 months, you're going to have a baby that can cry. But when you leave it inside the womb and you kill it, you don't hear those cries, but they're still there.
To the Republicans, why is Trump continuously backing Argentina? When will he support local farmers and ranchers?
So for those of you who may not know, a little bit of backstory behind this, and I cannot say that I'm an expert on this by any means, but Argentina recently had an issue where they would be going bankrupt, and so Trump is trying to essentially bail them out by giving them a loan and trying to increase the amount of beef that is imported, and I believe it might be soybeans, but I could be wrong. And to this, I can't really give my personal opinion on whether or not this is good or not. However, we are a country that is over $30 trillion in debt, and I think we can maybe have some sympathy for another country that is going bankrupt and maybe try and give them a little bit of help.
Now to the Dems. Why is Trump continuously backing Argentina? When will he support local farmers and ranchers?
We can't say exactly why we think Trump is going ahead and backing Argentina when he could be backing American businesses, especially when putting things like tariff policies on that are harming American farmers and harming Americans as a whole, but we are providing payouts to other countries. Do we think this is a smart decision? No, we do not, nor do we think this helps Americans in any way. But we'd like to add right now that our soybean farmers are going into debt because they cannot sell their soybeans. They're having a lot of overproduction of soybeans because they can't get out because our normal buyer is China. And China currently right now is buying those from Argentina. And Trump is also bailing out Argentina. Do you see where Americans are being left out of this hole right now? We are being put in a place where it's shown by our own president that they care more about a foreign country than they care about ourselves. There is words and talks about subsidies to our farmers to go ahead and help out with this deficit we're getting from not being able to trade our soybeans and having an overproduction. But that still means we have all those soybeans, and that also means for the next season, is this trade war going to continue to happen? Are we going to continue to bail out Argentina and China also buy from Argentina? Because next season, our farmers are going to get further and further down, where subsidies are no longer going to work. This policy by Trump is horrendous, and it is further hurting American farmers and citizens.
To the Democrats. With ongoing debates about freedom of speech versus inclusivity on college campuses, how should university admin handle student-led protests that are perceived as disruptive or offensive by some people?
I would like to begin that protesting is our right. Protesting what we do not think is just is our right. Although protests can be seen as disruptive or violent, I believe that protests are necessary, and it is forwarding our understanding of the other side and understanding those around us. I mean, if we didn't have protests, we wouldn't have civil rights. We wouldn't have lots of things that make all of our society what it is today.
We also have to know Fort Hays specifically is a public institution, meaning that we have the right to go ahead and protest on campus no matter what side it's on. This is not a private institution. We also need to bring out that our First Amendment is that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress or of grievance. We have to know that it is our right to go ahead and protest, especially on a public campus. It's also our right to free speech. If we're not physically harming somebody, if that is not something that's happening, that protest should not be stopped. If it is disruptive, if it's being a little loud in your class, if you can't study, we understand that that sucks, but without having some kind of disturbance, nothing is going to change, and we're not going to be able to bring apart real freedom and real expression of our rights.
Now to the Republicans. With ongoing debates about freedom of speech versus inclusivity on college campuses, how should university admin handle student-led protests that are perceived as disruptive or offensive by some people?
Freedom of speech is one of the most quintessential values to our nation, and this is a public university, therefore we should have protests, public protests. that are peaceful on campus. I immediately think of, whenever I hear this question, I think about Charlie Kirk whenever he went to the K-State campus a while back, and he always said that it was the worst freedom of speech experience he had on campus. But really what I heard on the background side of that was K-State gave them a very specific time frame when to speak and to do his prove me wrong tabling, and they went outside of that time frame. So I think it's important for institutions to give guidelines for when these events can take place.
It's very important that we promote specifically peaceful protests. We have some people that are associated with Turning Point that are part of an organization that goes around and promotes pro-life. They were actually assaulted just a few months ago on K-State's campus. Like I said, it's very important we promote peaceful protest. Here on Thursday, we actually had an event at Turning Point, speaking out against child sexualization. We had people outside promoting freedom, which was awesome, promoting not banning books, which was awesome again. And so we are all for peaceful protesting.
To the Republicans, with the government shutdown, how do you suggest we pay federal employees?
We already had a multi-million dollar, $130 million donation from a private billionaire give money to pay for paychecks, right? Pay for the military and make sure everyone is still fed. I think that is one way our government works. I don't think we should do that, but I think the most essential thing is stop having a government shutdown. We need to stop this Schumer shutdown, and we need to fund a clean CR that both parties agree with, and we need to just keep our government running. And we need to stop the deficit. We need to cut the deficit.
The big thing we want to promote is not hiding things in the fine print. If they're really for giving people their jobs back, reinstate and start the government back up so that we can then discuss moving forward with the things that they want to propose, instead of pending the government shutdown and trying to hide things in the fine print of these bills.
A quote by Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, the Senate Minority Leader, is, he said, "Every day gets better for us." And who is that us? It's clearly not the American citizens. They're going unpaid. And we want the American citizen to be able to get paid again, so let's pass a clean bill.
I would also like to add that in Kansas, there are a lot of federal employees, approximately 1.9% of the workforce, that are being impacted by this. That is 2% of Kansas citizens being hurt by the shutdown.
I have a good friend that just bought his own home, and he just recently got furloughed within the last few days. That means he won't get any more funding.
To the Democrats now. With the government shutdown, how do you suggest we pay federal employees?
Thank you. We actually had a law in 2019 that states that each employee of the United States government or a District of Columbia public employer furloughed as a result of a covered lapse in appropriations shall be paid for a period of the lapse in appropriations. This means that they would be back paid for every day and the time that was spent in that shutdown. But right now, the White House does not believe that the law automatically covers all furloughed workers because of a change to the law that says employees would be paid subject to the enactment of Appropriations Act ending the lapse. The White House is interpreting this clause to mean that Congress must appropriate to pay back once a shutdown ends, meaning that they can appropriate not to pay people back. We need to sit here right now. Do we want billionaires funding our government shutdowns and funding our people? We need our government to stay doing that. We need our government to have these things in place to help us. We should not be waiting for a billionaire to go ahead and save us. That only means that billionaires with that much money who can hold it over our head and can hold it over our people, that, oh, you guys don't want to pay them, I will, mean that they will start ruling our government, and that is no longer a democracy. We also need to put out there that this government shutdown right now, where Democrats are not voting for this appropriations bill, is to make sure that we can stand to live in America another day and for many years with healthcare and with all of our rights. This healthcare or this shutdown is happening, but we need to look at who is not funding to pay back.
To the Democrats. What are your thoughts on the ballroom addition to the White House in such a tumultuous time for our country, especially given rising costs of living?
I'm sure that it will be brought up that every single president has made changes to the White House, and it's a beautiful addition. Why do you really care? Well, I care because I have friends that are starving, who are homeless, who cannot even begin to think of what they will be able to do tomorrow. While Trump is sitting there building his gold-plated ballroom and flexing on all of the American people that he tore down the East Wing. Now, yes, presidents everywhere have made changes to the White House. President Barack Obama changed a tennis court into a basketball court by painting lines over the tennis court lines, sure. But that wasn't a complete demolishment of a historical landmark. Republicans constantly bring up that we should keep up historical landmarks, that our history is a deep part ingrained into us. But what is that history when we're getting rid of historical building where presidents down the lines hundreds of years have lived there?
I think it's important to note that the tumultuous time is about our economic stance. An economic stance the Trump administration promised to fix, and we are only seeing worsened. Worsened for our farmers, worsened for our neighbors, worsened for us, the students, and we are seeing this excess spending. Where will it end? What are we doing about it? Can this not wait until we fix the government shutdown? We have people who are serving in the forces, are Americans who are dedicating their lives, who are being unpaid, but yes, a ballroom is so important.
To the Republicans now. What are your thoughts on the ballroom addition to the White House in such a tumultuous time for our country, especially given rising costs of living?
I would like to start out by saying that this is a complete non-issue. Again, yeah, renovations are made all the time to the White House by multiple different presidents, but this one has a big difference. So the east wing of the White House was primarily just office space. It is being transformed into a beautiful ballroom that will be used by, I believe, every president that comes after Trump. And another great thing about this is that not a single taxpayer dollar is being spent for this renovation.
We do want to add that we feel like there is many more important things we should be talking about here, simply due to the fact that Trump and donors are paying for the entire East Wing. And I love that they mentioned that Obama painted some lines on the tennis courts or whatever. And I mean, last time I checked, that doesn't cost $376 million. But that's the total of the amount that was spent during the Obama administration renovating the White House.
I do think that there's a little bit of a divide on this. I spoke to other Republicans who did think that this is a sad matter. I do think it's disappointing that he previously said that he wouldn't tear down the East Wing and now has. That being said, the most important thing is it's not being funded by taxpayer dollars. I think this is going to be a great thing in the long run.
To the Republicans, Donald Trump's primary campaign promise was to bring down prices. How well do you think he's living up to his campaign promises?
One thing that really stood out to me the last time that I drove down I-70 was that in Salina, gas was $2.30 a gallon. I haven't seen numbers that low in years. And so while this is just one small change, and I'm sure that there are many others, and I don't have the stats, but my colleagues might, that it's one change that can make a really big impact on Americans. And as you can also see, egg prices have gone down. When I purchase groceries, I see a difference.
I think it's also important to note that the inflation rate, although we still have inflation, it's not like we're having a depreciation or deflation. I think it's important to note that the rate of inflation has decreased dramatically. I think we already cited the percentages, but year over year, we have a lower rate of inflation. I think that shows that, that we have progress on this.
Yeah, once again, 1.9% was Trump's previous administration as opposed to 5.3%. So we do believe that we're already in making progress on this, as well as we are positioning ourselves as the United States of America in a position of strength from other countries. countries, to not continue funneling money to these other countries, to stand up for the American people, to put America first. And that is what Trump is out advocating for with these other countries.
Additionally, lower inflation gives you more buying power with your dollar. So even if some prices may seem like they are a little higher or may have remained the same rather than gone down, your dollar is worth more and can go farther.
To the Young Dems, Donald Trump's primary campaign promise was to bring down prices. How well do you think he is living up to his campaign promises?
We believe and know by looking at the numbers that Trump's campaign promises and bringing down prices of things is not happening. We have to understand tariffs. There are people who say that we don't know enough on tariffs, we don't have enough information on it, but we've had tariffs before and we've seen other countries with tariffs, so there is enough information to look into what tariffs do to an economy. We are taxing goods that are imported into the United States of America, and since we cannot make everything here, and since we don't have all of the raw materials in the world, which I wish we did, but we don't, and since we do indeed need to trade with other countries to keep good relations, like we see right now, our relations are not going so well with China, and our soybean farmers and many other farmers are dying right now. Their farms are dying, they're not going to be able to pass those on to to the family. We are seeing that right now. Tariffs are charging these goods here. The prices go up on those goods because the companies don't want to pay those tariffs to import them, so they pass them on to the consumer. Our prices of our goods that we are buying every day are going up. Our farmers are failing, all because of tariffs and these relations that are failing between us and other foreign entities. We have to look at tariffs of what they are, and where those taxes are going, and how the American people are paying for them, and how our relations with other countries are suffering. And we're seeing that right now in real time. And if these continue, it is just going to get worse.
To the Dems, do you feel employers should hire applicants by meritocracy or DEI standards?
We think that employers, especially if they're private, should hire based off of what they believe is their requirements. We don't believe that things like the Civil Rights Act should be infringed upon. So we believe that if you are wanting to hire based off of excluding minorities, that is not correct, because that is against the law. We also want to talk a little bit about DEI up here. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion as if it's a bad word, as if it's something that's giving people legs up, and how people who are minorities, or the majority, are no longer going to be able to get employed or get in the same place that they could have 50 years ago. But we need to look at DEI as something that it is. It helps our business sector, and we know this. Having a diverse board of people work, make sure that we have an inclusive environment, people feel safer, and more ideas get around. If we have people from multiple backgrounds in a market deciding what goes out into the market, who are our buyers, what are they going to see, we'll have more ideas, and that means we'll reach more markets. If we have a group of people up here in this company and we all have the same exact ideas, we're not going to be innovative. We need to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion creates fostering innovation and inclusive spaces, and we need to stop looking at words like DEI like a bad word, and instead look at it for what it is, which is helping our business sector, helping our people, and making sure that equity, not just equality, is happening in our country.
To the Republicans, do you feel employers should hire applicants by meritocracy or DEI standards?
We're talking about equal opportunity, not equal outcome. Communism doesn't work. I think that the Civil Rights Act is the quintessential example of meritocracy. I think we want everyone treated equally. We don't want them treated better than other people. So, definitely, without doubt, meritocracy is the best system for us to go with.
We love the idea of having a completely fair and even playing field, and we simply believe that applicants should be hired based off of the quality of their work and based off of their ability to do the job, based off of their ability to fulfill that role. The idea of DEI originated from a good idea, but that's but what they believe the DEI should be is not what it is carried out. We are put a quota on the race of people that should be hired and the gender of people that should be hired instead of hiring the best possible applicants, which is racist.
Yeah, we believe as the College Republicans that you should be judged by the content of your character and not the color of your skin.
To the Republicans, why should American taxpayers fund benefits for people who entered the country illegally?
They shouldn't. Well, the American taxpayer should not be paying for anyone who's in the country illegally.
Yeah, we really didn't consent for them to be here. They came in here illegally, and to have them expect us to take care of them, it's kind of irresponsible as a country because it promotes other illegal immigrants to enter this country because they're seeing how they are being treated.
The biggest thing we speak on and believe is whenever someone commits a crime to get into our country, they are then a criminal. And the mindset and the psychological nature of doing that, they are far more statistically likely to commit crimes and cause issues once they get into this country.
To the Democrats, why should American taxpayers fund benefits for people who entered the country illegally?
To start off, I would say that there's one really important fact to consider here, and that's the fact that illegal immigrants, or whatever you want to call them, unauthorized immigrants, pay taxes. They pay a large substantive amount of taxes. We saw that earlier this year when the Trump administration wanted to gain access to IRS files and then caused the commotion of if they get access to IRS files, that means that we will have unauthorized people not paying their taxes, which will then cause a deficit in our government funding. But if we don't do that, then they don't have access to the files. We rely on immigrant funding as well. We as citizens benefit from illegal immigrants' tax dollars. Whether you like it or not, that is the hard truth. We also benefit from immigrant labor. Like I said, a large portion of our labor workforce, unauthorized and authorized, is built on immigrant labor. So I guess the question is not really where it should be, because it's not like the American taxpayer is only the U.S. citizens among us. It's not. It's lawful permanent residents. It's unauthorized immigrants.
We also have to put it in there that they're paying into our system, but they can't get things like Social Security, Medicaid, STAT benefits. So while they're paying into these things like the retirement fund for Social Security, they are not ever going to get those funds as an unauthorized immigrant in the United States of America, and that is put into law. So this is another fear-mongering tactic that we have to look at.
To the Democrats, with the deportation of illegal immigrants, there have been over 3,000 undocumented children seized from smugglers and sex traffickers. The Biden administration did nothing to stop these crimes against children. Is this type of deportation not for the good of all?
13,000, not 3,000.
Thank you for the clarification. I think that there is a real border crisis. I am not one to deny that. There is an issue at our border. And I will say that under the Biden administration, we did see a decrease in the amount of illegal immigrants funneled from Mexico. That is a fact from Pew Research. There should be more done about the crimes that we are facing, but the things that we keep trying are not working. Clearly, we're tearing apart families at the border. We are deporting American citizens. We are arresting American citizens because what we're doing is not working. We're infringing upon our people's rights. What has been shown to work is, and is much less costly, mind you, is to put in work in the border. To put in work to fix these areas costs our taxpayers a lot less and does a lot more. But the hard thing is we want to villainize a certain group of people. We want to villainize a certain people based on their color instead of really looking into and delving into the issue. If mass deportation was working so well, we would see a lot less of this happening, but we're still seeing similar rates. But we're also seeing an infringement upon American rights as we see citizens being detained by ICE, citizens being deported by ICE, citizens not knowing, families of citizens not knowing where they're at because ICE is not being clear with their detainees.
With the deportation of illegal immigrants, there have been over 13,000 undocumented children seized from smugglers and sex traffickers. The Biden admin did nothing to stop these crimes against children. Is this type of deportation not for the good of all?
Like we said earlier, we don't agree with political tactics of ICE, but we agree with their goal. We agree that illegal immigrants should not be in America. As I brought up earlier, they account for about 3% of the American population, whatever you want to call it. And that's, again, 3% of taxes only. But they account for about 20% of felony-related crimes due to fentanyl. They need to be deported back to their home country with their family, not separated from their family. There needs to be measures to take in place. They should be deported with their family. They shouldn't be separated from their family. They should be deported as a group. And if there's a child that has gained citizenship and born in the United States, they should be able to come back to the country when they're older. They should be able to give them a Social Security card on their way out, but be deported back with their families. That's what's going to keep them together. They need to be united, but we cannot have an illegal citizen within the United States.
Additionally, I would like to add that if there were an American citizen detained, I just want to take myself for instance. I would willingly be accidentally detained by ICE if it meant that 13,000 children could be freed from human trafficking. I think that would be worth it. Now, I would obviously want to be released because I am a legal citizen. However, I think it is imperative that ICE does this work to expose the crimes that are being done against children, against women, against any person that is in this country legally who may be a victim of human sex trafficking, rape, human trafficking, human smuggling. I think it is worth it to expose these criminals for what they are.
To the Republicans, how should the government balance addressing inflation and the national debt, and what effect will the approach have on the finances of young Americans?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How should the government balance addressing inflation and the national debt, and what effect will the approach have on the finances of young Americans?
Of course, I haven't read much economic reports on this, but it's my personal opinion that we need to do something called deflation, really. I think we need to stop printing endless dollars. I think one way to fix our national debt is to stop the deficit, whatever that means. You know, cut programs, certain programs that people may really enjoy and hold dear. I understand that they're important, but we don't have the money to pay for it. Unless we can find other ways to fund it, we need to stop the deficit first. Then we need to stop printing endless dollars. Endless dollars obviously starts rapid, unchecked inflation, and that's what we need to calm.
To the young Dems, how should the government balance addressing inflation and the national debt, and what effect will the approach have on the finances of young Americans?
Thank you. I'd like to address the last part first, just so that we know that this part of the question is important and it gets around. Like, how are things going to affect young Americans? Currently, right now, young Americans are at an all-time disadvantage when it comes to how much income your household has to make to live, being able to buy a house in this market, and being able to do so much more. We, right now, when we get out of college, are at the biggest disadvantage that we've ever had in like American history, other than recessions. Because we are not able to have a one-house income and stay afloat. We are not able to buy a house right out of college, get a good job like we have, and what the American dream is supposed to be. Now looking at that, we have to look at inflation, how is that harming us, and what we should do. First off, we should not be sympathetic to Argentina and continuously give them buyouts and give them money and everything, but also get deflation. Those two are not synonymous. They cannot happen together. We can't be sympathetic to Argentina and also decrease our deficit right now. If we truly want to decrease inflation as a country and make sure that young Americans have the funds to have a family and buy a house and have this American dream, we need to stop tariffs. We need to fund government programs that are going to help Americans, like SNAP benefits, like Medicaid, and like everything that we need to live. We need to sit here and look and not focus so much on our deficit, but focus on our American people, because the way we've been going, the Republican way, is not working, tariffs are not working, and we cannot afford to live.
I'd like to make a quick announcement that if anyone has any other questions, to please bring them to the moderator table. Back to the Dems. When it comes to abortion, what about rape?
I would like to bring up that rape cases take forever to prove in court. I have a friend who was raped 2 years ago, and although I do not want to speak about her case without her present, it took her 9.5 months just for the man to be put in jail for 24 hours. That was all that he got, and that was all. Although she was not pregnant, she would advocate for the fact that if you are raped, the trial takes way too long to prove for the fact that you were raped. By the time that it is proved that you have been raped and that baby was a product of the rape, you would have already had a living child out of your body. You would have already seen the product of a man forcing himself onto you.
Yes, I agree completely. I think it's really important to note that, like, in cases of rape, that we should be allowing abortion. But in addition to that, even if you disagree and you are a one-issue party, or like in this case or in this case, this muddles up our legal system. Like she noted, this causes tremendous weight into an already overburdened legal system. We are in a lawyer crisis. We are in a judge crisis. There's not people working in these courts. So to say, only if this case, only in a certain case, and then to have to prove that before any action can be done, just completely eliminates the purpose.
To the Republicans now, when it comes to abortion, what about rape?
So, as the Young Dems noted, there is a child produced in pregnancies that are a result of rape. And while I think obviously rape is awful and should never happen, but pregnancies do result of this, but that does not diminish the life that is created because of that rape. That child still has value regardless of who the father is, regardless of who the mother is. It is a human baby, and it deserves the rights and protections that we do, even though we are out of the womb. And I don't think that putting a burden on our legal system by prosecuting these cases is something that we should even consider. I think we should flood the legal system with cases that need to be prosecuted. I think every rape case needs to be prosecuted. Just because you have an abortion and then the baby is gone, that doesn't make the rape go away. That man or woman still needs to be prosecuted. Additionally, I think rape is so bad that the rapist should be in prison for the rest of their life, working minimum wage to provide for that child every hour that he is awake, so that that baby and that mother does not have to pay for a single cent. I think that the man's life or the woman's life, whoever committed the rape, should be devoted totally for child support, and that they should essentially become a slave to the judicial system to pay for the crime that they committed of raping either a woman or a man. It doesn't have to be a man that commits the rape.
To the Republicans, why do conservatives support widespread gun ownership despite mass shootings?
Because of the Second Amendment. Of course, we believe in, and this goes back to a Yale law review back. I don't like the way they named it, but they called it the embarrassing Second Amendment because at that time it wasn't used the way we use it today. They actually, this journal actually opened it up to an individualistic view of the Second Amendment. We believe that any individual has the right to own these weapons, not just militias, right? And that continues on, and this was approved by the Supreme Court in 2008 in DC v. Heller, right? So it's not just conservatives, this was a majority opinion by the court in 2008.
I think a lot of mass shootings come down to mental health as well, and I think both sides would agree that we need to restructure our mental health system. We have a very weak and poor mental health system. Obviously there can be a lot of contributing factors, but restructuring that mental health system can be quintessential to the idea of mass shootings.
I also just want to say I think conservatives are all generally for closing gun show loopholes that exist. So.
Criminals will find ways to create violence and find ways to get guns regardless.
These laws make it harder for an honest man to be honest.
I think Republicans would also support closing the Kansas bill sale loophole, which if you don't know, I only have 2 seconds to explain, so look it up.
To the Democrats now, why do conservatives support widespread gun ownership despite mass shootings?
Thank you. We can't exactly say why conservatives support these gun laws and having an unlimited right to the Second Amendment, even though there are mass shootings that are actively taking our children's lives here in America. What we can state is that you will hear on one side, which is not ours, state that it is a mental health crisis and that we need better mental health for these mass shooters, these people inflicting this insane amount of violence on our children here right now today. But we have to also look that they want to defund programs that will make sure that everyone in America has access to mental health care. That is part of our healthcare system. That is a part of Medicaid, Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act. If we are defunding these things, we are making sure that people can't get access to care, and even if they can get access to care, their premiums are shooting through the roof. We have to remember, if less people are on healthcare in America, premiums go up. If poor people, if people who can't afford it, even if you have a good job, you can't afford premiums a lot of the time. If you can afford it, premiums go up. Nobody has healthcare. So if this is a mental health care crisis, we also have to make sure that we're funding healthcare, which is not happening. Democrats are the party of healthcare, of helping with mental health crisis, and also making sure that our children can go to school every day and not die. We want to make sure that it is, yes, we have a right to the Second Amendment, we believe that, but that there should be magazine limits, that there should be red line laws, there should be places where you have to get background checks, you have to take classes to get these weapons.
To the Democrats, what are your thoughts on food stamps and Medicaid getting cut?
As a child when I was a child, I relied heavily on food stamps and Medicare. I grew up in poverty. I only had a single mother who worked one job, as that's all she could do. I grew up in and out of foster care. So food stamps and Medicare were essential to my survival. And as I look at our future generation, Gen Alpha, and I see the cuts to their Medicare and the cuts to their food stamps, I'm devastated. This not only means that children will go hungry across the country, but this also means that our government does not care that our children are going hungry across the country. This means that they do not care that your child is getting sick. This means that they do not care that your child is breaking their arm on the playground. All they care about is making an example out of the Democrats.
We also would like to add that yes, people can reach off the system and not work and get these benefits that we work hard to pay for, but we have to notice that those people have children. And if we take it away from people who might be mooching off of the system, that we're taking away from those children. And if we are wanting to have children be able to have health care and to have SNAP benefits, no matter what their parents do, we need to keep these things funded. We cannot cut them. Even if there might be adults doing wrong in this system, we need to make sure that children in America have these programs. Children cannot apply for these benefits. Their parents have to, they have to be a part of that household. So that means we need to keep them funded and keep people applying for benefits and getting them as American citizens.
To the Republicans, what are your thoughts on food stamps and Medicaid getting cut?
I just want to say real quick, these are great idealistic programs, right? However, I'll say the unpopular thing. How are you going to pay for it? We can't run a deficit forever.
So the only reason that SNAP benefits are being cut right now is because the government is being shut down. Once the government is open, these benefits will be reinstated. And I would have a few stats about Kansas specifically. Currently, there are 186,000 total enrollees in SNAP, and an estimated 72,000 of these are children. Now, again, we want these benefits to be fulfilled. However, that cannot happen until the government is reopened. Another thing that I would like to point out that is not related to Kansas is Virginia. Currently, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia is going to pay for the SNAP benefits of Virginians using the $2.7 billion surplus that he has received from the Virginians into the tax system. So he is ensuring that his citizens are receiving SNAP benefits regardless of whether the government opens. Now, as a parallel, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland is refusing to do so unless he has specific, like a specific written thing from the government saying that they will be paid back. Now, I would like just to see, like, who do you think cares more about the children being paid? Whether you are guaranteed to be paid back or whether you're willing to lose money to keep your citizens fed?
Back to the Republicans, some conservative initiatives propose changes to university accreditation and a ban on using federal funds for certain academic topics, such as critical race theory. What is your stance on these proposals, and what role should political ideology play in academic curricula?
I think that any public institution should be at, under the control of the federal government that supplies funding for it. So if the federal government wants to change the accreditation, they have the right to do so. Again, they are paying for the institution to stay open, as well as, our tuition dollars. So if they want to change the accreditation system, we may not agree with it personally based on, the specific policies, as only one was named. We can't really compare it to anything else. But again, this is the federal government's jurisdiction, so we can't really change anything about it unless we change something on the federal level.
To the Democrats now, some conservative initiatives propose changes to university accreditation and a ban on using federal funds for certain academic topics, such as critical race theory. What is your stance on these proposals, and what role should political ideology play in academic curriculum?
Some of these courses and accreditations that we see conservative ideology attacking are things like gender studies and like critical race theory, which we have courses on this campus right now through Fort Hays about those topics. And a lot of those become a requirement or an option you can take in a requirement to graduate. When you have a requirement to graduate and they have that big long list of classes, you can pick whatever one you want, and you need 120 credit hours and you need at least one from this, one from there. Say you decide to pick that gender studies or that critical race theory. Based under this president or whatever president sits in office, they can non-accredit it, and you just don't have that degree. I think we need to understand what accreditation means. That it means it is not accredited. That does not count towards your degree. That class does not count towards your bachelor's. If you're going into something like med school, which I hope to be doing soon, and I get a call that because of our administration, whoever is in Congress, that I no longer have that degree and have to take a semester out of med school to get a new credit, that is ridiculous. We also have to notice that this goes the other way. If we have a Democrat in office and it is a liberal ideology and we don't want a course taught that goes conservative, it goes to the other aisle and they don't get that degree accredited. We have to notice that no matter who is is in office, we should not be accrediting or de-accrediting based off of political ideology in our colleges. We should be able to have free speech, be able to take the courses that we want, and make sure that that course is accredited. We do not need this, and if you think that this is okay, you are saying that you believe that people should have their degrees taken from them and have to stop their life to take another course so that they can earn that bachelor's degree that they just worked hard on.
To the Democrats for our last question of the night. Next November, Kansans will vote on whether or not we should abandon our current Kansas Supreme Court justice selection system in favor of directly electing judges for the Kansas Supreme Court. What impact could this have on Kansans? Would you Republicans like to have a 30-second rebuttal to the previous question?
Yes, but please repeat the questions.
When did I speak their names? I didn't say the college Republicans.
No, they didn't get an opportunity to answer the question.
So it's not a remark.
No, they answered. They thought they were getting a rebuttal.
Oh, you went?
Yeah, they answered. Yeah, okay, okay. I was very diligent.
Okay, the last question. Next November, Kansans will vote on whether or not we should abandon our current Kansas Supreme Court justice selection system in favor of directly electing judges for the Kansas Supreme Court. What impact could this have on Kansans?
Hi. So if you guys don't know me, I'm a pre-law major. I'm currently working on my law school applications right now, so I have an invested interest into our judicial systems. I think one thing that's really important to consider with this issue is that yes, in theory it sounds really good. Let's have a choice, like they should be representative of us. But this means that they have to, before they decide cases, tell you their political ideologies, tell you how they plan to decide on these cases. That's not the way that our law was established to be decided. Our law is the law. It is a textual grounding. It is not based in ideology. So when you look at a case, you should be looking about how the law should be applied according to the text and the spirit of the law, not about whatever political ideology you were funded to stay on a case. Because that's the other thing is as we saw in Ohio, it brings a large amount of PAC funding to our small states, which arguably removes choices from our rural Kansans who already don't see many people in elections and takes it to our larger funded urban areas. Judges do a lot of hard work. They have to go through 3 years of law school on top of a bachelor's to do this. We have seen that the impacts that this can have are awful because it means that they're deciding politically and not for the text of the law, which is how we decided our judicial system to be set up.
Sorry guys, you have to yell. To the Republicans for our last question. Next November, Kansans will vote on whether or not we should abandon our current Kansas Supreme Court justice selection system in favor of directly electing judges for the Kansas Supreme Court. What impact could this have on Kansans?
Well, first of all, I would recommend that we all say no to that bill. The judge system is supposed to be an isolated system. It's supposed to be not influenced by politics. It's supposed to be an insulated system, so they're not impacted by basically being voted in. They're not running for office or worried about running for office. They're a very isolated system. They serve lifelong sentence for lifelong until they choose to retire sentences. They're in the bad, they're on the bench dying. So they're there to be insulated from the rest of the system. They're not meant to be influenced by people voting for them or influenced by money like other politicians will be. They're meant to be very isolated, and this would have ramifications in the sense that judicial hearings would be based on basically voting. Like, they'll be like, well, I want to get elected again, so I'm going to vote this down